Senate Republicans unanimously blocked a sweeping voting rights and election reform bill from going forward. In a key vote, the For the People Act failed to get the 60 votes necessary for lawmakers to begin debating it. The Democrat-backed measure would have set a federal minimum on voting standards in all 50 states, but GOP senators argued it could take away power from states. CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion has the latest.
The Democrat-backed voting rights bill, dubbed the For the People Act, was opposed by Senate Republicans from the start.
I think you could appropriately title it the For the People Act.
And evenly divided.
Vice President Kamala Harris, the president's point person on voting rights, presided over the chamber as the GOP blocked debate on the bill.
What this is really about is an effort for the federal government to take over the way we conduct elections.
The bill would expand automatic voter registration and early voting, end partisan gerrymandering, and make Election Day a national holiday. But Senate Democrats were unable to secure the 60 votes required to overcome a Republican filibuster.
This is all about one thing. Some people don't want some people to vote.
The push for a federal voting rights law comes as 48 states are considering nearly 400 Republican-backed bills that would restrict voting. Across the South, grassroots activists organize freedom rides like those during the civil rights movement, concerned the proposals could again make it harder for people of color at the ballot box.
It's Jim Crow 2.0. It's the same impact and the same patterns, and that's why we're fighting it.
Experts say Congress is running out of time ahead of next year's midterms.
Soon we're going to be in the 2022 election cycle. The districts will be drawn very shortly. And at that point, it gets very difficult to pass election reforms.
Nikole Killion joins me now from Capitol Hill. Well, Nikole, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer controls the future of the filibuster. How could Tuesday's vote impact this?
Well, I think we'll have to wait and see. Leader Schumer is keeping his cards close to the vest as far as next steps. Several of us reporters today asked him, what is next if, in fact, this vote fails, which it did. And he just said, we're going to have the vote, and then we're going to discuss the future. We're going to have the vote and then discuss the future. He said it several times, including to me. I mean, one of the things I asked him, for instance, is whether or not they might try to break apart S1. This piece of legislation into smaller chunks, because certainly there are some pieces of it that appear palatable to both parties. But that being said, it really is unclear. Of course, this will likely renew calls for reforms to the filibuster. And, thus far, Leader Schumer hasn't seemed willing to go there. He's always said, all options are on the table. But as of now, I think it's hard to predict whether or not he would be inclined to all of a sudden, try to make reforms. That's not to say that won't happen, but we already know that two members of his own party are vocally opposed to making any changes, including Arizona Senator Kristen Sinema as well as Joe Manchin. They have repeatedly said that they don't agree with trying to take away the filibuster, this 60-vote threshold at this time, although Manchin at times has suggested he may be somewhat willing to embrace some type of reform, perhaps a talking filibuster. But again, I think, the pressure will certainly be renewed on Democrats to try to take action here, simply because a lot of folks were hoping that this bill would at least proceed as far as debate, and didn't even get that far.
Well, speaking of Senator Manchin, he was expected to be the lone Democratic holdout in Tuesday's vote, and it wasn't until Tuesday afternoon when he said he would support advancing the bill. What led to this?
Yeah, so there were a lot of behind-the-scenes negotiations between Senator Manchin and Senator Klobuchar, who was one of the lead sponsors of S1 for the People Act. And so basically, she, over the last couple of days, had been working with Senator Manchin since he proposed changes to the bill. You'll recall, of course, a couple of weeks back, he wrote this op-ed expressing his opposition to S1, but then he circulated some potential changes saying, look, I can get on board with some parts of the bill, but not others. So from that standpoint, he and Klobuchar had been talking over the last couple of days. And so what they had worked out is that in the event that S1 advanced for debate and for consideration that they would bring up an amendment that would include Senator Manchin's changes. But again, now that we haven't even gotten to the debate portion of the show, in effect, this bill has been killed. It doesn't appear at this time. I mean, it's really unclear, I guess I should say, what the fate of his compromise proposal will be.
Well, on Monday, the vice president said that President Biden will keep fighting for voting rights. How does the president plan to do this? Is it clear?
Well, Vice President Kamala Harris actually presided over the debate over this procedural vote about whether to move forward with S1. And so following the vote, she did tell reporters that the fight is not over. And so she referenced, for instance, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is a bit narrower in focus as opposed to this sweeping elections overhaul like S1. This is more narrowly focused on the issue of restoring some provisions of the Voting Rights Act. And so from that standpoint, that is something that we have heard lawmakers express support for both in the House and in the Senate. So that likely is one of the next pieces of legislation to watch going forward.
Meanwhile, Nikole, several top White House aides met with senators Tuesday to discuss their bipartisan infrastructure proposal. What is the latest on these negotiations?
So at this point, they still continue to talk, mostly behind closed doors. We've been following senators and White House officials all day around the Hill as they've kind of, tucked into nooks and crannies to have some of these conversations. What we know at this point is that there is no deal as of yet that we're aware of. And really one of the key sticking points are the pay-fors, how this bipartisan infrastructure proposal could be paid for. Of course, it runs roughly $1 trillion, including some $500 billion plus in new spending. And so we know it kind of covers some of the more traditional infrastructure, such as roads and bridges. But again, there's a big divide over how that should be funded. Of course, the White House had put forth paying for an infrastructure package by raising the corporate tax rate. That didn't go over so well with Republicans. They proposed things like user fees and indexing the gas tax to inflation, but the White House doesn't want to raise the gas tax, so there continue to be a lot of back and forth discussions. And as of now, it doesn't appear that there is a firm timetable to try to come to a resolution. But again, everything is day to day here on the Hill, so stay tuned, as they say.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I ask you about infrastructure every day, and because of the constant back and forth, there's not always a lot to update. But the fact that they're talking, I suppose some people would argue, is a sign of progress. So to be continued, as you said. Nikole Killion, always good to have you, Nikole. Thank you.
Absolutely. You bet.